Hi, I'm Anya Anti. I'm a foreign conceptual photographer and storytelling photo artist. I strive to create beyond traditional portraiture, and I use photography as a way to create something that is possible to capture using props, installations, and Photoshop manipulations. So today I'll be sharing 5 conceptual portrait retouching tips. Tip number 1. Use non-destructive editing. I can't stress enough about the importance of non-destructive editing. It might be obvious, but I've seen so many people still don't use layers and masks, or merge everything in the end and don't save the layered PSD file. You can't imagine how many times having a layered PSD file with all the key steps on the separate layers was crucial and helped me enormously in my work. Use layers and masks. It is very important. If you don't work with layers, you are very limited in what you can do, and what you do to the image is more permanent and destructive. When you work with layers, it's a flexible and easy way to make changes. Usually, the bottom layer is our original photo that you can always go back to. And it's important to have the option of saving the file, closing it, and then coming back to it later, in days, months, or even years, and still have all the original information. By making edits with layers, everything is the same way you left it. Tip number 2. Develop good work habits. Developing good working habits will take some time and practice, but in the end, it will make your workflow more efficient, quick, and sometimes will make your life easier. Keep a specific layer structure. I highly recommend always doing a background copy first. Then do all the work regarding changing pixels, such as retouching, liquefying, and compositing, and preferably all on separate layers. Then apply all your adjustments on top as separate adjustment layers as well. This way, you will be able to tweak both the retouching part and the adjustments part without interfering with each other. Organize your layers. I'm very bad at naming them, but I often group my layers and I try to keep them tidy. Check if you're on the correct layer, because once you start editing and create more layers, that's when it can get confusing and you want to make sure you're on the right layer. Or maybe you need to add another new layer depending on what changes you need to make. Check your tool settings. Photoshop remembers all the settings you have in the option bar and keeps them until you change them. So if you haven't used the brush tool in weeks and you click on it, it still has the settings you used last time. So it's a good idea to always double check those settings. For example, when working with the brush tool, I may select my brush and start painting, but I noticed nothing is really happening. And that's because I didn't check the brush settings, and it turned out that the brush opacity was too low and it was in some other blending mode than normal. So I suggest you check the opacity and blending mode before you start editing. Learn the keyboard shortcuts and start incorporating them into your workflow. Tip number 3, don't overdo. As a rule of thumb, I often recommend my students to reduce the opacity of every retouching and adjustment layer to 70–80% to avoid overdoing. Especially when it comes to retouching the skin. Never remove under eye circles completely. It's a natural part of the human face. Lighten and soften them by using the clone stamp tool with low opacity, but do not remove. Don't make the eye whites and teeth too bright. It's natural for humans to have some pigment in there. Don't try to make everything perfect. Leave a few hairs, spots, and lines here and there to make it more alive and less sterile. Tip number 4. Focus on the whole image, not just the subject. When it comes to retouching portraits, people often focus on the subject only, especially their face. Paying attention and removing things in the background can make all the difference and make your work look much cleaner. I call it cleaning visual garbage. And I don't mean obvious things like actual trash that might be lying around or people that you don't want in your shot. I mean anything that looks distracting and overwhelming in the frame. Bright and dark spots. It could be, for example, a very bright bokeh bubble, leaves and branches on the ground, anything that sticks out. Tip number 5. Take a few steps away from your computer. It's a really good idea to occasionally stand up, take a few steps away from your monitor, and take a look at your work from a distance. Because after working for a while on your computer, eyes can get tired and you get lost in the details. So looking at your work from a wider perspective can help see it as a whole and see the big picture. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope these 5 tips were very helpful for you, and you can find me on my website anya-anti.com or my Instagram anya_anti_art. See ya!